From Illinois Public Media, this is the 21st show. I'm Brian Mackey. The federal government shutdown is now in its second day with no end in sight. We begin our program with another Illinois congressman, Eric Sorensen. He represents the 17th district in the U.S. House of Representatives. The district starts in Moline and Rock Island, goes east to Rockford, then reaches south to Peoria, Bloomington Normal, and Macomb. He's served in the district since 2023. As I mentioned yesterday, we've invited all three of Illinois' Republican members of Congress on the show, Representatives Mary Miller, Darren LaHood, and Mike Bost. No response yet. We will keep trying. In order to make our schedules meet, we taped with Congressman Sorensen Wednesday afternoon, right after yesterday's program on the government shutdown. With that in mind, no calls for the first part of the show, but you can let us know what you think. Our email address, talk@21stshow.org. Congressman Eric Sorensen, welcome back to the 21st Show. Thanks for being with us.
Brian, it's always good to talk with you.
So I want to start by asking for your top-line reaction to the way things have played out in the past few days. And I should say, again, we're taping this at noon on Wednesday, 13 hours, I guess, Illinois time, into the government shutdown.
Well, look, I came back to Washington on Monday morning, first thing, to continue to do the job. And the Speaker of the House had canceled votes for Monday and Tuesday, and he told the House GOP that they did not need to go back to Washington. And so it was clear when I left Illinois and headed back to Washington that there was going to be no negotiation, that they were going to purposefully shut down the government. And it was really quite a stark sight to see the House Democrats fill our half of the chamber, and not one Republican showed up on the other side. And look, I think this is a point now where the proof is in the pudding. Who's doing the work for the people and who's doing the work for the billionaires? Look, I showed up to do the work. I'm always going to be in Washington when I need to be, even though this is not home. This is never going to be home. I'd much rather be in McLean County than here in the District of Columbia. But so long as I have this job and the people need me to do the hard work for them, I'm going to do it.
NPR and PBS News and Marist had a poll that came out on Tuesday of this week, said, if there is a government shutdown at some point this year, which party do you think would be more to blame? 38% Republicans, 27% Democrats, 31% both, and then 4% said neither, which that's a whole nother conversation. But that's 58% of people say Democrats at least have some of the blame. What do you say to them?
No, I think that's probably accurate because, look, we are so tribal in this country today. We were pointing fingers at one another today. We feel like that's how we're going to get ahead, by putting someone else down. But let's be honest, that's not how we solve problems. We solve problems by being at the table with one another. We solve problems by listening to one another. And right now in Washington, the case example here today is I'm sitting at the table and there's no one across from me. And that's really the worst part about this, that the President of the United States, that the executive is controlling and has grasped the necks of every House Republican and every Senate Republican. He has got such a grip on them that they're not allowed to work with Democrats to fight for health care. Let's understand where we are today. We as House Democrats from the very beginning have said, we're not going to stand by and allow you to cut health care from people who are struggling because the costs of living are going up, right? And so that's what we're standing on. We're standing on the principle of fighting for the people, and making sure that when you open up that envelope that has your premium for next year, you're going to have sticker shock, because the House GOP has not put forth any legislation that has helped to lower your costs back at home. And so we're going to stand firm. We're going to stand united to say that this is who we fight for, the people. Enough of the finger pointing. I'm here to work with anybody, whoever wants to come to Washington to sit across the table to make sure that we're getting the relief that people need.
The Trump administration has threatened mass firings from federal agencies in a shutdown scenario, as opposed to the furloughing that's traditionally happened in shutdowns. What effect do you think that could have on the functioning of government, especially long term?
Look, I think that's a great question to ask, and my colleague, from Florida, Congressman Maxwell Frost, put it so succinctly. He said those were threats. Those were like a bully on the schoolyard saying, if you don't do this, I'm going to hit you harder. Okay? I'm going to fire all these people unless Democrats do what I want them to do. That's wrong, right? We that's not how we do this. We have never had a president like this that has literally threatened the jobs and the livelihoods of families because he didn't get his way. I feel like this is the toddler. We're playing Candyland, and they realize that they're behind in the game, so they just flip the whole table over in a tantrum. Because let's be honest, um, if there are reductions in force or rifts, those rifts are going to be not only hurtful to families, they're going to be hurtful to the economy of the United States, and we can't allow those threats to happen.
What are you hearing from federal workers in Illinois about how they expect to be affected? And I guess we should note this comes on top of already cutbacks, layoffs, or at least not filling positions, depending on which agency and which function of government we're talking about, that have already been happening this year.
Right. So there is a worry, right? There is a worry from people who have already been the earlier victims of Doge earlier this year. People that we have been fighting to get their jobs back, and we were able to do that. Look, I think, as the only meteorologist in Congress, right? I think about our friends who are working at the National Weather Service offices, right? In Chicago, in the Quad Cities, in Lincoln, right? They are protecting us. But now those National Weather Service people have got to go to work, and they're not going to get paid. And so once the shutdown is over, I'm going to fight to make sure that they get all of their back pay 100%. But it's more than that. It is the people at the air traffic control tower at Central Illinois Regional Airport or Peoria, right? It's the TSA agents that are still going to come to work because they understand how important their jobs are, even though they're not going to get paid. And so it is making sure that our government is working for the people and the public servants that are out there doing this work, that are putting on a military uniform every day. They understand how important their jobs are, but they get frustrated, as I do, that they're being asked to do this because there's one political party that is in power and they just don't want to negotiate with anybody. It's my way or the highway. That doesn't work.
This is the 21st show. I'm Brian Mackey. We're talking for the first part of our program with Congressman Eric Sorensen of Illinois' 17th District about the government shutdown and other big news in politics. We spoke Wednesday afternoon, so no calls for the first part of our show, but you can let us know what you thought. Our email address, talk@21stshow.org. This is not the first time this year we've talked about the prospect of a shutdown. The last was in March. There was a pretty fierce debate among Democrats as to whether or not they should have let it happen then. That was sort of peak Elon Musk, peak Doge being in the news. In the end, Illinois U.S. Senator Dick Durbin and a few of his colleagues in the Senate did vote to advance that temporary budget bill, although they ultimately voted against the bill itself, but that's parliamentary. We don't have to get into that. I wonder, in hindsight, do you think Durbin and the other Democrats made the right call in keeping the government open at that time?
You know, um, so going back to March, okay, we had a continuing resolution, right? And what had happened was we were unified as House Democrats. The way I talk about it, it was the sh sharpest knife that you dare not touch because you were going to be cut by it. Okay, it was dangerous. But once that got to the Senate, it was a double-edged sword. Okay, because a government shutdown hurts people. But keeping the government open allowed us to fight back in this legislation. But let's understand where we are from then to now. I voted no then, and now it is so much more worse because SNAP cuts have, because SNAP benefits have been cut, because Medicaid, all of those, there are tens of thousands of people in our district alone that are going to lose health care coverage. Right. And now we see the Affordable Care Act, the subsidies be threatened. Look, it gives us a lot to stand for. And that is, I think, a thing that we as House Democrats were able to fight for the people. Okay. But you know what? Those on the other side of the aisle, they can't tell you what they're fighting for right now. They try to throw out some lies and some BS that we're trying to protect so that, those who are undocumented in our country get health care. That's never been that way. Those folks do not have the opportunity to be on Medicaid. Those folks do not have the opportunity of getting those services that taxpayers pay. And so I think the fight right now is about preventing these healthcare costs from skyrocketing. Because in just a couple of weeks, your premiums are going to go up by nearly double. And we've got to fight to make sure that doesn't happen.
This is just a temporary spending measure we're talking about here. There are still deeper questions about the overall bigger picture federal budget, and one of those has to do with farmers. You're on the House Committee on Agriculture. We've talked on our show recently about the prospect of another, would you say, aid to farmers, bailout for farmers, depending on your perspective, given what they have been facing in terms of the trade war that the president started and has cratered their market for soybeans as one problem among others. How are you thinking about the path forward for ag policy and potentially subsidies for farmers related to the tariff war?
First things first, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Why on earth are we ever going to be okay with Donald Trump giving a bailout to Argentina before he helps the American farmer? That is just incredible to me. Or the fact that we can't get a farm bill over the finish line because now in a government shutdown, it's not so much that the committee room door is closed, the committee room is locked. And so there are going to be real ramifications for our farmers going into November and into December. And God help us if the government is shut down into a new year. We're asking so much for our farmers right now, who are sitting there in harvesters and combines, who are some of the hardest working people that I have ever known in my life. But look, the policies of this administration, even the policies of the previous administration, have not done enough to make sure that our farmers are going to be solvent so that they're going to be able to give the next generation, their kids and their grandkids, the ability to have success on the farm. And agriculture is our number one industry in Illinois. And so I want to be there. I want to get the results back home. But I can't do that if the Republicans stay on their vacation.
Do you think? Do you think this news you mentioned Argentina, Javier Milei? Apparently, Trump is a fan of him, and that's reportedly driving some of this. Is that news breaking through that we're going to be, I guess, sending them $20 billion or in some sort of swap?
I mean, it's a slap in the face. It's a slap in the face because, the price of corn and soybeans is so low. It's a slap in the face because Donald Trump's trade war has meant that China, which was our number one export of soybeans, is now not even on the list. They're gone. China now goes to Argentina and buys Argentinian soybeans. China now buys Brazilian soybeans. They don't need us anymore. And so that's the problem here. Because Donald Trump's trade policies have screwed farmers long after Donald Trump will be out of the White House.
What do you
And
say
so
to people who say, the farmers voted for Trump by and large, or certainly in overwhelming numbers? This is the dish David Frum at The Atlantic said earlier this year. This is the dish they ordered for America. They should partake in it like everybody else who's paying higher prices at Walmart or the home goods store or wherever.
Well, look, I didn't come to Washington with political baggage, right? So I'm able to have a unique position to be able to work with, my colleagues across the aisle when they are allowed to by Donald Trump. But look, we as House Democrats also have to be able to be forthcoming with solutions that are going to help farmers and agriculture. It is making sure that we're developing sustainable aviation fuel. It is working forward for whatever is going to be next. What are the next generation fuels that we're going to need? Because we're so really good at farming in the state of Illinois. And so, like I said, previous administrations haven't gotten it right either. And that's why farmers, they're looking for help. And they don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat who's going to help them. And if I have to be the one that's going to go there and do the hard work for them, that makes my job really more noble than it was before.
Congressman Eric Sorensen represents the 17th District. He's a Democrat. He's in the northwest part of Illinois. Thank you for being with us on the 21st Show.
Thank you, Brian.
Again, we spoke with Representative Sorensen yesterday afternoon. More to come after a short break. This is the 21st Show. Stay with us.